what's your name? Harry. And I'm associate, so I work on some of the projects with Changing Our Lives. Okay, so this project is all about looking at the myths around learning disability and autism. So we've come here today to sort of talk about learning disability and autism, and to look at some of the negative ideas and stereotypes that there might be around those two terms and around people who do have a learning disability and who are autistic. So very often they're very negative myths and negative ideas, and they're all about things that people can't do rather than what they can do. And that's across society, but I think as well as that, in some communities there can be additional ideas and myths and shame around disability and autism. So this project is all around challenging those myths, and specifically for this project we're looking at the South Asian community. So we won't do this today, but what would be really nice would be if you could tell us your names and what brought you here today. So, can we start at the end?
My name is Mujit.
Yeah, hi.
So I'm with my daughter, so she is already autistic. So
Okay,
that's why
yeah.
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, oh brilliant, okay, good to meet you.
Now I'm 51.
Oh, okay.
So we're here for more 11 quarter after.
Yeah, okay, great, so yeah, welcome both, yeah.
My name's Dalvia, and I'm a primary school teacher, so I thought I'd come along today and see what you guys are about.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, good to meet you, Delvia, yeah.
My name's Barnett. I've just come to sort of speak to the community and know a bit more about what exactly it is and what it's about, and sort of learn really.
Okay.
I've got much knowledge about it.
Brilliant, brilliant, okay. Good to meet you all, thank you for being here. So just a few ground rules. We'll probably, there might be little bits that we don't run through just because of time, but obviously we want to listen to each other and respect each other's contribution, give each other a chance. Hopefully our phones are on silent, and I'm just thinking, is mine on? So I hope it is. And feel free to ask questions, please. We want everybody to be open and curious, and obviously what we say in the room here today stays in the room, so people may choose to share things that are a bit more personal. So first of all, do you have any questions that you particularly want answered today? And if so, if you would like to take some of these. Just write any questions you want on the sticky note, and we can hopefully we'll come. Oh, thank you, Deep. I've only got felt tip pens. Thank you. That was good, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you don't have any questions, it's fine. We just want to make sure that people can get out of the session what they want.
Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. I like your sweatshirt. Barbie fan. Do you want some of these?
Just for me to read out. I can never read my writing.
Maybe, but that's probably a better idea, isn't it? Yeah.
I'll just ask you later.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the film, isn't it? I'm trying to bring our notes. Yeah. we have a film that we made as part of the project which we'd like to play. Yes. And I was going to say, I think I put it in the presentation.
This film is in English. If you would like to watch this film with subtitles in another language, such as Hindi, Arabic or Punjabi, hover onto the film until the toolbar appears. First, turn on subtitles / closed captions. Next, go to settings and click on subtitles / closed captions. From here, click auto translate and choose what language you would prefer.
Oh, sorry. It doesn't want to do it, does it, full screen?
The facts about disability. This film is in English. Hover over the turn on subtitle. Next, go to settings and click on / from here, translate and choose what language you would prefer. Diagnosis and labels. It could be hard for us all to understand information about diagnosis like learning disability or autism that are placed on us as human beings. Our own views may be shaped by the traditions, ideas and beliefs that we have grown up with. It is for these reasons that negative myths exist. We need to learn the facts. People with a learning disability and autistic people are often surrounded in negative myths. They and their families are taught from childhood what they can't do rather than what they can. A learning disability affects the way a person learns new things throughout their lives. We do not always know why a person has a learning disability. Sometimes it is because a person's brain development is affected even before they are born, during the birth, or in early childhood. A person with a learning disability might have some difficulty understanding complicated information, learning some skills, looking after themselves, or living alone. A learning disability is different for everyone. No two people are the same. Lots of people who have a learning disability can work, have relationships, live alone, and get qualifications. Other people might need much more support throughout their lives. Autism describes the way some people communicate and experience the world around them. Being autistic means your brain works in a different way from other people. Nobody knows what causes autism. It can affect people in the same family, so it may sometimes be passed onto a child by their parents. There are various characteristics associated with being autistic. These include a strong preference for routine, sensory differences, enjoying focused, more intense interests, communicating differently to non-autistic people. Being autistic does not have to stop you having a good life. Like everyone, autistic people have things they're good at, as well as things they find difficult. Being autistic does not mean you can never make friends, have relationships, or get a job. But you might need extra help with these things. Autism is different for everyone. Some autistic people need little or no support, whilst others may need help from a parent or carer every day. Learning disability and autism are not an illness or disease. Learning disability and autism are not the same as a physical disability or mental health. Learning disability and autism are lifelong and cannot be cured. Disability is not to be feared. It can be scary when you receive a diagnosis, but there is a great deal of support available for families to understand how this will affect their son or daughter. Law GNG. Religious and cultural practices can be defining elements of belonging and identity in South Asian communities. When it comes to disability, some people believe it is a punishment from God or a test to be endured for eternal reward. This is not true, and these misconceptions are harmful, bringing shame to families. Some mothers can feel that they have done something wrong when they give birth to a disabled child. This shame creates feelings of denial and fear, and sometimes people with a learning disability and autistic people are hidden away because of the stigma they and their families face. This can be very isolating. There is no shame in disability, just hopes, dreams, and ambition like anyone else in our communities. What is true is that it takes a village to raise a child. We all need positive support in our lives, but some of us just need more support than others. With the right support, children with learning disabilities and autistic children are raised to thrive. With high expectations and positive views of their future, these children can go on to become employees, leaders, artists, and role models, visible in their communities and paving the way for future generations. Attitudes towards learning disability and autism need to change. You can be the start of this change by simply starting conversations in your community and sharing this knowledge to challenge the negative myths that still exist. Sinati's disability gave us a big scare in the beginning, but as we came to the terms of it, we wanted him to become as independent as we could help him be. And just being positive and involving him with all the daily chores and mixing with the community has made him very independent. Disability will not stop anyone from doing anything. You have to stay positive and always try your best. Every individual have their own abilities, so please don't give up and go for it.
I'm a disabled man from a South Asian community. Being disabled does not stop me from living a life. I'm part of my community. Have a great job. I travel around the world with my family. And I'm a pivotal part of my mosque. My life is very ordinary, so I want to show people what is possible. Don't be afraid.
I loved raising my daughter. I've gotten to see her develop into such an independent, strong woman. She always tries to achieve her goals, and I'm so proud.
My son lives a gloriously ordinary life. We encourage him to do and be whatever he wants, and this is exactly what he is doing.
With our whole family supporting him, our grandson is thriving and living his best life. Nothing is impossible without a little support.
I have family. I have life.
Going through the
Okay. So that was just a video that we made, and at the end you would have heard the voices of, well, I was there talking about Harry, and he said that he loves life and he loves family, so I think he summed that up really well. And just before we go on to this, I'll just show you some of the other people who contributed. So this is Monique, and she did the voiceover. This is Siraj, he talked about his life at the end, and this is Harry. These are just some of the resources that we've got. And just showing you that they do live very ordinary lives. Hello, come in. Hello. Hi. Please take a seat. There's some seats here. On our website as well, we've got Kashmir's story. Oh, yes, Kashmir made his story a few years ago about his ordinary life. He's an autistic man, also from the South Asian community, but that one hasn't been translated yet, but we're talking about getting that one translated.
So these are, we've translated them into 3 languages. So we just want you to think about what is a learning disability that we covered in the video. But it affects the way a person learns new things throughout their life. So it's not just a small part of their life, it's throughout their lifespan. And we don't always know why the person has a learning disability. And it can be because a person's brain development is affected even before they're born. So my son has a condition which is called Down syndrome, and that affected him in utero. So while I was pregnant, and so that's caused his learning disability. But it can happen during birth, or it can be picked up in early childhood. And a person with a learning disability might have difficulty understanding quite complicated information. So I have to break down things for my son, put them in very simple terms so that he can understand it. They can have difficulty in learning new skills, so they'll need some support with that. Looking after themselves and living alone, so Harry needs quite a lot of support just to get through everyday tasks. But hopefully he will eventually leave home, maybe have some support workers who will help him do that. So we don't kind of put a limit on what his ability is. We always try and think, well, how will he live that ordinary life? And a learning disability is different for every single person. So if you meet one person with a learning disability, you've met one person with a learning disability. Everybody's very different. Do you want to talk about autism?
So autism, as we kind of touched on in the film, describes the way some people communicate and experience the world around them. What we think is that autism just really means that your brain works in a different way from other people, and nobody at this stage, we don't know what causes autism. There's lots of theories, but nothing has been shown for certain. What we do know is that autism affects how a person behaves with other people. So there's often differences in how people are socially, how they interact, how they communicate with other people, and how they experience the world around them. So for many people with autism, there can be issues, or they might find to have difficulties with things like bright lights, certain smells, loud noises, certain touch, certain textures of clothing, food. They can be quite difficult for autistic people. They can have sensory differences, which can affect how they feel and how they behave. So other things that often come along with autism can be the preference for a routine, so liking things to be very predictable, so they know what to expect. The sensory differences we've just talked about. Sometimes people can enjoy very focused, intense activities. I've known personally a lot of autistic people over the years, and known people that have had completely focused interest on the natural world, for example. I knew a man who had actually done a PhD in, it wasn't biology, it was something else which has gone out of my brain, because my brain doesn't work very well. But he did his doctorate, he became a professor, and he actually, because he also liked photography, he actually managed to photograph, which had never been done before, a particular moth coming out of its chrysalis, because he had such a focused, passionate interest. He sat there without eating or drinking for 24 hours to wait for this moth to emerge from its chrysalis. It was never been photographed before. But yeah, absolutely immense knowledge around sort of the natural world. And communication can be different for people with autism. So often autism is described as a hidden disability because you can't necessarily see that somebody is autistic. And that can be difficult for the autistic person because people interpret maybe some of the ways that they behave as unusual or odd. So that can be quite difficult for autistic people. And again, autism is different for everyone. And the phrase, if you've met one autistic people, if you've met somebody with autism, you've met one person with autism, that's it. It's different. It affects people very differently. I can't remember the man that said that actually. He's an autistic advocate.
Yeah.
An American man, I can't remember his name.
Is it Steve Silberman?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
So what we need to really remember and remind people, because often this causes a lot of confusion, is actually learning disability and autism. They aren't illnesses or diseases. And sometimes people will assume that if you have a learning disability, it's associated with poor mental health, but it isn't. It's completely different from that, and it's completely different to having a physical disability. And what we always say is never fear learning disabilities or autism.
So just some of the facts and myths that you may have heard yourselves or may have come across that we wanted to talk about. So one that we know of that's said is that learning disability and autism are caused by a person's bad deed. Is that something that you've heard yourself or found yourself people saying or thinking?
From my experience, when my son was born, I did have people not say to me, but would talk amongst themselves and say, oh, she was unmarried at the time and she was living with a white person, so you know she's obviously done something really awful, so she's now got a child who's got a learning disability. But strangely enough, I have 3 sons and he's the only one with a learning disability, so that kind of didn't fit the bill. But it's certainly something that I've had said about me. But you know, is it a fact or is it a myth? Is there any truth behind if you've done a bad deed? No. No.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And then another one, we often hear this, and I've often heard this from parents that I've supported, where they say, "Oh, you can cure it." Recently, I was supporting a family who had a young son who was diagnosed as being autistic, and were convinced that they could take him to India and find a cure. And it was really difficult to kind of explain to them, well, I'm not sure you can find that cure. So again, you know, this is something that really needs to be challenged. Is it a fact or a myth that you can cure autism? So I don't know if any of you kind of heard that, or people have said to you there may be a cure, or has anybody come across that?
I think you always think there's a hope or a cure for everything these days. I mean, I think in our community as well, we feel that, you know, it's an illness, like you say, it can go away. Let's take you to plunges or do, you know, some prayers or take you to some saints. You can get better, but like you're saying, you can't cure.
No.
It's there. That's one of my questions is there a cure for this, or is it, you know, is it like a short-term thing or a long-time thing? Is it more children, more adults, or males or females? You know, how is it more in like males or females, or just all the same?
Yeah, well, in terms of learning disabilities, there are no cures for any learning disability, and certainly autism as well. None of these can be cured, they are lifelong, so they will stay with you. I mean, I don't know if they're more prevalent in males than females.
I think there are slightly more men with a learning disability than women, but it's only something like a couple of %. And in the past, more men were diagnosed as autistic than women, or boys than girls. But what we have learned a lot over the last 20 or 30 years is that the way that the diagnosis is carried out is biased towards male type behaviours. So more boys were getting diagnosed and it wasn't being spotted in girls because it shows slightly differently. So we think that probably it's as common in girls as it is boys.
And masking is really common
girls
in girls. So
masking.
you might hear the term masking, and that's just, again, it's just the way that they are managing to kind of hide certain traits or kind of cover it. So that's the masking element. So actually, when you're looking at diagnosing the young girl, it might be really tricky to kind of see what's going on there. But they are getting much better at kind of picking up masking.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's really important that people understand that there is no cure for learning disabilities or autism.
Is this something that you'd have to just find, go to a GP doctor to find out yourself? Because how would you know, like when you see a child not behaving well, do you just think it's because of a naughty child, or do you think it's because of his age? And I'm talking about my grandson who's 7. Do you think it's his age he's doing this, he's going to go out of it, or has he got autism, or is it a disability? So he's got the first thing to do is to take him to the doctors and have him checked out, or what would you say?
I guess for me, it's always been about speaking to your health worker. So your GP would be your first point of call, because they would kind of know what to look out for, and then they can put you on an assessment pathway. But certainly they would be the first person. And if you're in school, you'll tend to find that teachers will pick up on certain traits and be able to give you some advice. Teachers are normally really very good at picking up a student when they might think they need some help somewhere.
Especially if you find out who the SEN lead is in a school, they can be quite a good source of help and support. SEN.
Special educational needs.
SENCO, isn't it? SEN coordinator.
So all the schools will have one of those, and you could go and approach them and ask them.
Yeah, and I think just to reinforce what you were saying, Mandeep, it's that learning disability and autism can't be cured, but that doesn't mean that people can't live great lives with the right support, and that might mean from family, it might mean from friends, it might mean from paid staff, it might mean all of that, but people can live very ordinary and gloriously ordinary lives with the right support. So another one that we know sometimes comes up is that prayer can cure a person with a learning disability or an autistic person. I mean, again, fact or myth? I mean, it is a myth, as we've just said, that this is not something that can be cured, having a learning disability or being autistic. So prayer is not gonna change that. I think a positive attitude about disability and autism, and a positive sort of a group of people around them who believe that people can achieve no matter what, I think that makes a difference. That makes a huge difference. And acceptance that this is the way the person is. This is the way they're always going to be. But with that positivity, then the person can thrive, the child can thrive, become an adult, become a part of the community and live a great life.
How can you be so sure that a prayer or something won't help the child or adult? Is that from talking to a lot of people about it, or is that just your personal feeling that prayer can't make anything better? Or is like there is something that
this is a big thing.
You've been doing it for so many years.
Yeah.
Is this something that like somebody, a person come back to you and say, well, I prayed, I did it, because I feel that I feel that prayer is a hope for us. We feel that why not, if we pray and do a dance, pray for them. But like from what you're saying, all I'm trying to say is there's something that people come back to told you, well, we prayed with this, that, or you just feel that it's not going to help, it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's a big question, isn't it, really? It's making my mind go crazy now. I'm kind of like, but I think
I'm sorry.
No, it's good to talk about, isn't it? It's great to talk about.
Sorry?
I was also thinking the same thing. I think it's just about belief, to be honest.
Yeah, I think people have belief systems, and I still come to the Gurdwara, I still pray, and I don't pray that there will be a cure for him.
No.
My faith is to kind of like find that strength,
help
and that
you
community spirit to make sure that we can support him. Because I know ultimately, my son's condition is because in his body he has an extra chromosome. That can't be removed. There's no surgical procedure. There's absolutely nothing that can remove that. And with that extra chromosome, every gene in his body is impacted by it. So there's just isn't a cure for that. It's just impossible. So I think for me, prayer is a kind of real personal kind of maybe a coping mechanism, or just a support mechanism. To give you your strength to kind of cope with any difficulties you might have. But I know that if I was to pray and say, get rid of that chromosome, that's not going to happen because the science is very clear.
The biology of it.
His human genetic makeup would never allow that to happen. So that's why we make that point about prayer, because so often people confuse it as praying for a cure, where actually we say, well, if prayer will be good for you to kind of find that support of just that personal faith, rather than using that as a means of finding a cure for
And I suppose it's
autism.
thinking about those things that you can change and those things that you can't change. So you can't change your biology, can you? We can't change that we've got blue eyes,
No.
brown eyes, black hair, blonde
No.
hair. We can't change if you're disabled or not disabled.
No.
But what we can change, and what prayer and whatever your belief system is can change, is the way that we feel about it, the way that we cope with it, the way that our community copes with it, the way society. So those are the things, aren't they? Which is, I guess, what you've just been saying, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
So another myth, fact, that there are medicines or injections that can cure autism. What do we think?
No.
No, you're absolutely right. That is a myth. No amount of medicine or injections can cure autism, because again, it's not something that your biology can't be changed through taking any kind of medication.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
does ADHD fall under in the autistic spectrum? Because I know it's huge, isn't it, autism? Which is why it's interesting for me to come and find out a bit more as well. I can't quite remember if ADHD does, because obviously to help younger children, you know, they do get put on medication, doesn't it? Obviously that's probably not a cure, but maybe management strategies, isn't it? I guess it helps to
you have
calm
autism,
them.
and you can have some people will have ADHD alongside that.
Yeah.
So Harry's got a diagnosis of ADD, so he doesn't have the hyperactivity, he's got the attention deficit disorder. But you'll find that medication for the ADHD just is to manage the symptoms. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
It's not about finding a cure.
No.
Again, it's just a management system. Because people with ADHD, you know, are quite fidgety, find it very difficult to focus and concentrate.
And sorry, go on.
Sorry, I'm not sure about the cure of autism, of what the effects of medicine and injections have, but what I've read is that sometimes, you know, when children have vaccinations and things like that, this can sometimes, I think, cause it. I've done a bit of research on it, and also because I work in a nursery, I had one parent, one of my key child, he was autistic, and his mum told me that when he was born, he was completely normal. He even used to say single words. But then when he had his vaccinations, he suddenly changed, and she thought that maybe he's developed autism, and then he's kind of diagnosed with it now.
But there was, I'm trying to remember the dates, but when you're in your 50s, it all becomes a blur. But there was a very, very popular belief at one time that vaccinations, childhood vaccinations it's measles, mumps and rubella, wasn't it, that caused autism. But that's been largely discredited now. So the scientist who was responsible for leaking that into the community and spreading that idea was shown to be not very trustworthy in terms of the approach. So generally speaking, in the scientific community, it's now, you know, and in the autism community, it's accepted that that's not the case, that vaccinations don't. However, I do know some people still hold on to that, and I have met parents who still believe that. But no, what's perhaps more likely is that often signs of autism tend to show until the age at which people have vaccinations, and then we put those two things together. So it's much more likely, I think, that it's that. But I can remember a friend of mine years and years ago was totally 100% convinced that that's what had happened.
Because the thing is, what we're noticing now is that we're having so many children who have speech and language issues, behaviour issues. Yeah. But before, maybe it wasn't noticeable or anything, but now it's just, they just keep
There's a lot more now, isn't there?
It's really
I think
It's getting more and more, isn't it? But we just don't know why.
I mean, you mentioned ADHD. That's something that I think we've become more and more aware of. And I think sometimes when we become more aware of things, we can diagnose it more easily. It's not that there's more people who are autistic or ADHD. It's just that we're better at spotting it, understanding it. And I think all of those neurodiverse
conditions like ADHD and autism and dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all of those quite often come, you know, 2 or 3 together, don't they? Yeah, so I think we're definitely getting better at kind of spotting these things. We're not necessarily getting better quick enough at doing something about it and supporting children and young people and adults, and as a society just accepting we're all different, aren't we? We're all different, and I think I just get more and more convinced that we're all odd in our own lovely unique ways, aren't we? We're all kind of perfectly imperfect.
We just need to talk about these things more. We need to talk about, we've got to sort out our communities. We don't talk about it because we don't, this is why I'm surprised there's not many people here, because they don't want to know about it. I mean, I just wanted to know more about it, really, to be honest. At least you can talk to somebody about these things. They just think, well, you've got a naughty child, you slap him, sit down, he's just naughty, he's very naughty. But they don't go in to see, well, why is he naughty? Why is he doing this? Shall I talk to somebody? Shall I talk to somebody? It's like my child's neighbour now forever. You know, that just does not, people are not talking about these things, anything really, to be honest, I feel.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have those conversations, that's where we can kind of get misinformation in the community, and people start kind of, you know, these myths and these stereotypes can emerge. So I think that's why it's really important that we're doing this project. We just felt that we wanted people to have those conversations in communities and kind of say...
It's very hard to dig into some of the Asian community, very hard to get into them. You know, that these things are very important to talk about, to sit together, to know more, the knowledge. It's just hard to sort of, it is, isn't it, really?
It is,
You know, to make them understand.
And you need to have that open mindset,
to
realise that there are a lot of children with autism, and one child is very different to another, and their needs are very different, therefore their support needs to be according to their needs. And then all on top of that, it's very difficult to get the right support at the right time, because I've worked with children who've gone right through their primary school and they've got to like year 6 and yet they're still struggling to write a sentence that an adult can read, but then they're going to go into high school and they're going to have, you know, it's going to be very difficult then because the diagnosis just takes years. That's one thing I've noticed, to diagnose children at an early stage, it takes a very long time, and the Senkos will do as much as they can to the best of their ability, but once they've put the paperwork through and so forth, it's another 4 or 5 years the child's left the school by then.
And
the gap's getting bigger in their learning, and then that's, you know, not going to help them moving forward.
We've got a lot to change, I think, haven't we? We've got a lot to change because unfortunately, the system is very slow, isn't it? You know, it can be very, very slow. And you know, I'd like to think that one day we'll live in a society where you don't have to have a diagnosis. We just treat each other the way that we all want to be treated, and we make allowances for each other, disabled or not disabled. You know, we wouldn't have to fight for the right support or fight to change to change things. But we're a long way from that, unfortunately. So in changing our lives, we primarily work with people with learning disability and autistic people, also people with mental health conditions as well. But what we say and very much believe, and what we see happen with some of the people that we work with, is anybody can live an ordinary life. So this ordinary life, what does it mean to you? An ordinary life?
Doing what you enjoy, being sociable,
being yourself, not doing for others,
taking an interest in something and pursuing it.
We're too busy trying to please everybody else and not thinking about our own life, to be honest.
Yes, I think that's very true. That came from the heart there.
Yes. Somewhere down there.
With this one, I was thinking we're just robots at this point, because we wake up, we go to school or work, come back home, and then we're just busy.
Yeah, we are.
So I was thinking about that, to be honest. I wasn't even thinking about someone being sociable or anything like that, because I don't know, I think we're just too much we're just so busy in our lives with our work, and we're just forgetting about ourselves. Now we don't even know how to live our life.
Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah,
point.
that's
I
a
think
really
really good point.
Yeah.
But
I
I guess
definitely agree with what they're saying, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we should be doing. We should be thinking more about ourselves.
Yeah, that's
Stop
right.
that from today.
Yeah, it's really
You
good.
have 5 minutes, half an hour to yourself. That is your time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Give yourself time.
Yourself time. Very important, I think. Very important.
But you've picked up on lots of things. I mean, having an ordinary life isn't great sometimes, is it? Because you are so busy, you don't have time for hobbies and interests. But that is what it is, isn't it? We're busy, we work, we have families, we have friends, we have relationships, we have hobbies, places that we go to, we have faith or not faith, or, you know, all of these things. And that is quite ordinary. Sometimes it's rubbish, sometimes it's all right, isn't it? Sometimes it's great, occasionally it's great. But that is ordinary, isn't it? And all of those things, having that independence, having education and training, paid employment, a home, good quality healthcare, hopefully, being part of a community, being safe and free from harm, and having a friend, family, friends, and relationships, and all of those things can be up and down, can't they? That's going through too quickly. But what we say at Changing Our Lives is disabled people, actually, with the right support, can have exactly the same life as well. Siraj, who spoke earlier, you know, he works for us, he's a paid employee. I've done lots of work with Siraj over the last 10 years, and we go to places and we work together on an equal basis. He's disabled, I'm non-disabled, but you know, we have equal value, and we go out and we work together. He's very much part of his community. Monique, that you can see there, and I think one of her books is out. She's a disabled woman, she works, she has her own life, she's up and down the country all the time doing. She's so busy. Yeah, I don't know. Can you come today, Monique? No, I'm too busy. No. You know, and I'm sure Harry, as he grows up and spreads his wings, will have all of these things in his own way as well. And Kashmir, who is on this project with us, he's an autistic man, he's been to university, he's actually stood for local elections because for some reason he loves politics. He's got paid work now with the West Midlands Combined Authority, he's worked with us as well. We over the years, even, whatever people's ability, with that right support, they can have this life. That might mean that they need 24 hours support to live in their own home, but they can still have that life, they can still have their own home, make their own decisions, be busy, be fed up one day because they can't see their friends, but the next day it's all great because, I've had a nice day. And it's just having that opportunity to have control over your life like that, like we all do to a large extent every day. We make our own decisions. We decide that today we're going to leave here and put ourselves first for a change and a bit more self-care. We can make all those decisions, and I think our work is all about promoting that idea and that reality that disabled people and autistic people, they can have that too.
Just the last thing I wanted to say, this is my personal belief. I feel like if God takes something away from you, so for example, these children or adults who have disabilities, I don't want to say the word disabilities, but God actually, He gives them something as well. So for example, if they do have autism or ADHD, He gives them a talent as well. So a lot of our children, I've noticed that they are really talented in something, even though they're just 2-year-olds. You'll see that they may be a bit creative or something else. So if God takes something away from you, He gives you something big as well.
I think that's a nice, I'm not religious, but I think that's a lovely way of kind of seeing it. And for me, I would see that's the same as kind of thinking of we are all talented, aren't we? We all have our things that we're rubbish at, we all have our things that we are brilliant at, and being surrounded by people that have that belief in you as a disabled person or a non-disabled person, that's the key, isn't it? And having that belief that yes, you're talented, you've got your strengths, you've probably got your weaknesses as well. I certainly have, but
And the one you mentioned about the photographer, so it's just that he's looking at those details that God has given him the sense to, do photography.
Well, Harry here, is quite a brilliant Bollywood dancer,
See?
and he's performed in London at the South Bank on his own on the stage. I was terrified standing at the side and just seeing this sea of people, and Harry just got up, had his whole outfit, it was filmed, it was on social media, and that, you know, that's an immense talent for him to have. You know, he struggles with a lot of things, will always need a lot of support, but we've said to him, right, what do you want to do? And he said, dance. Okay, how do we get you to dance? And we've just encouraged and nurtured that. You know, his brothers have other talents, but I think his is way better than everyone's. None of us
And I bet
can
you
dance.
really enjoy his
Absolutely fantastic. So
I didn't realise it was on your own. Your mum told me you danced at the South Bank. I didn't realise it was on your own.
He was on his own.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Yeah, he had his solo slots and he did 2 dances, and he was brilliant. So, you know, he's got that
It's the
talent.
confidence as well.
And he's so
isn't it?
confident.
Yeah.
I was terrified. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know I can do it, but
No, that would not be something I could do. Definitely not. So your questions, any questions? Have we answered some of them, or are there others that we haven't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I'm supporting my cousin Ed as well.
Okay.
So really, so my daughter is 5, turning 6 in May, and it's more what kind of strategies can they use at home to help. It's more about her communication. So they are struggling with her communicating with themselves. It gets tricky when it's meal times as well, because she's not able to say what she likes, what she dislikes, what she wants, whether she's hungry.
right.
So that's really tricky.
Do you have a speech and language therapist involved?
They said in school, but I don't know maybe after 6 months, few months.
Okay.
So she did have some support in
Yes,
She did have some support from a speech and
Right.
language therapist, but I think that only lasted for a short period of time.
Okay.
And I think sometimes in cases, what I've noticed in schools as well, they kind of do support the children, obviously where they need it, but then it is like almost short term, you know, and so that's hard as well.
I went to special school because in normal school no have like
Okay. Yeah.
you know, but they
As a
said,
cardigan in normal school.
yeah, and even Sanko accepted. So she said, I asked personally Sanko when I'm meeting there. They said I can say she needs special school.
Right.
So I request again to special school. So anyone help anyone?
You have to go through the process through the local authority.
Doctor and Dr.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So she's not at special school at the moment.
She's in
So
the mainstream
she's in
school.
mainstream.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're trying to.
And it's also what I suppose as well, maybe advice for the age that she is. You know, would a special school be suitable, appropriate for her at this young age? Would that sort of come later? But also, how long would the process be in order to get there as well? And that can take a couple of years or longer. And she's older there then as well anyway.
Can I ask? So, are you in touch with the Sendias, isn't it?
Sendias, yeah.
The Disability Information and Advice Service in Wolverhampton. It's SENDIAS. If you leave your details, we can send you a contact.
SENDIAS.
DIAS. SS.
SS.
Yeah, I thought
And that's with Wolverhampton Council.
They are commissioned by Wolverhampton Council.
All local authorities should have one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, every local authority area has one. They are brilliant in terms of supporting families and helping them to get the right help. They know what's available. They know who to contact. They know all the teams, the different teams for the different kind of age groups and specialities.
They'll know all the schools as
They
well.
will know all the schools. They will help you through that process. So far better than we can. But also they will be able to support you in terms of finding out information,
in terms of communication as well. They might not be able to tell you themselves, but they'll be able to help you get that information. The other thing is that there is a group in Wolverhampton of parents, and they're called Voice for Parents. They would be very good to contact too, and they have a support group, a peer support group for parents of children with autism. And I went to the group actually about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was that's usually very good. Apparently, they've got lots of connections, but they were great. There was 5 mums there who were phenomenal. And they would be, because I think sometimes talking to other mums or other dads about what works, what doesn't work, that can be, you can learn so much, can't you? And they'll, you know, some of them will have older children, they will have been through what you've been through. Did you have any advice from the speech and language therapist? Did they give you any tools, any ideas themselves?
They give me card.
Like symbols.
Symbols,
pictures,
visual cues,
When we say, do you want to go to toilet? If you go to baby, she go herself.
I think it's like she's picked up these things, so like when mum does say, do you need to go to the toilet, she understands and goes. Or when it's tidy up time, she tidies up.
But when we ask him hungry, so
But they love that. So when she asks, are you hungry? Her answer's not clear to them whether she's hungry or not.
do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? She knows, understands that.
Yeah, and I think from what mum told me before, she it's lunchtime, so she's going to get her lunch ready. It's snack time, so she will do that if that at the appropriate time. But she's not saying herself, I'm hungry, or because it's a communication.
It can be a communication thing. It can also be often autistic people don't register what's going on internally as much as non-autistic people do. They don't have that awareness of like hunger and pain, or it's, they do have the awareness, but it's just different, you know, maybe lower thresholds. So they have to be really, really in pain before they feel the pain, or they have to be really, really hungry before they feel the hunger. So it could be a little bit of that as well. But I think going to Sendeas, going to Voice for Parents, talking to people and finding out from there would be really good, because they'll help you through the school system and getting the right support. And they'll know people, they'll all have had experience, or like, you know, this speech and language therapist was really good, and you know, so, but the visuals usually, all the visuals are usually really helpful for people, for children, autistic children, so using those as much as possible and reinforcing that. But they're definitely those groups. And if you want to leave contact, I can send you the details.
That's fine.
Are there special schools and special needs? Are there schools actually, they come into the actual schools? Like the children?
There was a big push on reducing the numbers at special schools across the country, with the belief that everybody should go to a mainstream school but just get the additional support. I think the reality is,
it's quite different, the reality.
The reality is that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does.
That's what's happening now.
And in Wolverhampton, I don't know whether they've done it yet, but they were looking to increase the numbers at special schools. So I'm not for segregation at all, but I also know that sometimes being in a mainstream school just means you just get swallowed up as a disabled young person, you know. So I think, I think they have their place. I don't think, you know, I think we should look to integrate as much as possible. And
when Harry was born, he was profoundly deaf. So his speech didn't come until he was about maybe 8 or 9, when, you know, the clarity of speech emerged. So when we were looking at primary schools, everybody wanted to name the local school that his older brother was going to, and the head teacher was great. She was like, yeah, we will accommodate him and all of that. But actually, it was really tricky because he couldn't hear. And so if he's in a group of 30 children, so much noise, he just, and in a way,
him having the one-to-one support would have meant always taking him out of the classroom, so he wouldn't have been part of that group. So he's been specialist, is still in specialist college now, and he's always been in smaller classrooms, still had that one-to-one. The curriculum is very much tailored around his support. So there's certain things like he has to sit close to the board, certain colour schemes don't work for him. So the teachers can, because it's a smaller class, they can work really well around that. So he's had a really good experience. Whereas I know other young people with Down syndrome who've had a really good journey through mainstream. So it just depends. Again, it's that individual needs. You know, what are your needs?
Well, it depends what
how
help
can
you
school
get
work
out of there,
around?
really.
Yeah.
What help you want,
Yeah.
what help you
And
get.
sometimes it depends on the commitment of the school to
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
work,
Yeah,
doesn't
some
it?
schools are
Sometimes
brilliant.
schools are really
Yeah.
poor,
And
and
some are
sometimes
awful.
they're brilliant.
You just got to fight for them.
Yeah, it's what works for that individual child,
Yeah.
isn't it? And what we all want is for our children to thrive, isn't it? And if they're thriving in special school, they're thriving.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's-
It's on listening, absolutely.
I think sometimes it's the funding as well, isn't it? Because we've
is.
heard a lot of that over the years.
Yeah.
There's not much funding for X, Y, Z, and therefore things are
Yeah,
taking
definitely.
time.
Yeah, that can be a nightmare.
But it
And
is-
again, I think the reality is, sad reality is, I think for parents of disabled children and autistic children, there can be points of where it's a fight, isn't it? And, but again, Sendai so the people to have on board because they know the system inside out.
Yeah.
They really helped me when I was looking at secondary schools for Harry, because I'm in Birmingham,
Right.
and we didn't feel that any of the schools, the special schools in Birmingham, were quite there to meet his needs. But we found a really good school outside of Birmingham. And Birmingham automatically were going to say no, but we went to Sendias and they were excellent, really supported our admission process, and we got him in.
And they know your rights, don't they? as
Yeah,
parents?
absolutely.
They know
Yeah,
your legal
they know
rights.
what we can and what we can't
Absolutely.
ask for.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the local authority will just say no to everything,
Yeah.
even though you absolutely have the right
You're
to ask for
entitled.
it.
Yeah.
And I think you feel like as a parent, you know, as a parent anyway of any child, you sometimes feel a little bit like powerless and a little bit like you're a small cog in a big system. But when you're a parent who has to fight for your disabled child, I think that's even more so, isn't it? And I have to say, and just like, I think the system takes advantages of takes advantage of parents who are quiet and don't speak up.
Yeah.
So Sendai would be absolutely no, you have a right to this, we will fight it, we will push it. So
That's really good
it's
to
good
know.
to have them on board, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Any other things?
So do you, sorry, what was the name of your organisation?
Changing Our Lives.
Changing
Yeah,
Our Lives. Okay.
we've
So
got a
do you go
website.
and do sessions in different communities and supporting?
Yeah. I mean, China Tie is something that started in Sandwell, isn't it?
Yes, Sandwell. we
Yeah,
started
you
that.
were involved right
Yeah.
from the start, weren't you?
Yeah, so I started it last year in Sandwell, and I went to Smethwick-Gurdwara, I went to women's support groups, I went to a couple of mosques. And it was really great, kind of, you know, just, again, it was just about having conversations and getting people to just open up.
And exactly what you were saying.
And awareness.
And raising awareness and giving people the confidence to kind of challenge, because I had a lot of people who didn't really understand what learning disabilities were, but after a few sessions they were kind of like, oh, I challenged someone the other day because they said this and we knew it was wrong, and I was like, that's brilliant. That's great. You know, because for me as a parent, you know, I worry about Harry when I'm not around, because I want him to be part of a community that accepts him, understands his needs, and will always support him. I think that's always a worry for any parent, especially when you have a disabled child. So that's why, you know, I love what Changing Our Lives do. I think they're great for kind of, you know, giving people that kind of confidence to talk about these things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why we like to write these books, and you'll see others on our website about people living ordinary lives, because I think it
if people don't see it, you can't believe it, can you? If you don't see that, okay, this person, they need support staff 24 hours a day, but they're coming and going wherever they like. They're making that, they may not communicate verbally at all, but their staff know them really well, so they know what it is that they're being told. They might use pictorial systems, might use communication devices, but they're making their own choices, not somebody else, not a parent or a support staff, or they're making their own choices in life, and they're having, we all choose to a certain extent where we live, don't we? Who we live with, to a certain extent. Who we're friends with, who our family are, maybe not. But, what we do as a job up to a point, we have all of those choices, and we're very much about that's, we all have the same human rights, disabled or not, but that doesn't always mean happen in reality, and we're all about let people have their rights, let's make sure that they're able to come to fruition in reality, and they're respected.
The other thing hurt me the other day. I went to stay with my daughter in London, and I went to drop her son off at school. He's 6. So I was walking up the way up the school, and there was 2 teachers, one on this side, on this side. And I was just walking, there's one kid behind it, so he was like screaming. So that's probably the normal thing when he does. I don't know what's the matter with him. I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know whether it's autism or whether it's his disability. I look back, and his dad's really trying hard sort of to get him in. But the 2 teachers on the side said, oh God, here he is, he's off again. And I heard it with my own ears, and it really hurt me. So I came back, told my daughter, I said, Mom, you should have told them straight away. Why didn't you tell them? Why are you saying this for? I said, no, I just couldn't. But she went mad. She said, Mom, that shouldn't be like that.
No, it's not good, is it? So,
teachers, did you say?
2 teachers said, oh God, he's off again. And I thought, it's not normal. They shouldn't be saying that.
No.
So they've got no feelings for anybody else, have they really? For a teacher to say that, you think, well, what goes on around this world? How can it be like that?
That's the negativity
She
that child
she said, you should have gone to Mum and told them off. She said, if you tell me who they are, I'll tell my headmaster. I said, what do you do?
Well, it sounds like you've done a good job with your daughter. That's what we want,
She
isn't
works
it?
at school, she's HR manager, she works at school.
Okay.
I just said, I'll leave you. I said, I'm going to go back to Wolverhampton. I said, I don't want to
They won't see you.
I don't want to say, oh God.
There's the
But I
trouble.
mean, about how much those few words hurt me. Although it wasn't my child, it hurt me. So I think that's not very nice.
But that shows you've got that kind of empathy and that understanding already, which is what we're talking about.
Exactly,
Just, people having their human rights and being respected, for whatever difference they might have.
That's right, Just want to share with you.
Who knows next time you perhaps will.
You might just
That's
have that
it.
little
I think I will.
We don't always, do we? I mean, I think all of us sometimes I'll leave that battle today. And then other times you do, don't you? And that's, but I guess.
It's like they rolled their eyes, I was looking at them, they rolled their eyes, oh God, he's off again. Here he goes on.
It's not the attitude.
No, but still, you have to give each other.
Would you mind? I'm so sorry. They are on our website. Please do have a look. But we didn't have that many printed, did we?
No,
So
we had, it was limited edition.
It was, yes. But they're lovely, aren't they? They're lovely books. And thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
We've been helpful today.
I'm sorry. No, that's okay. But we did show a video. I don't know if you caught the video, but you can watch it.
It's on our, if you go onto our website, onto Changing Our Lives, China Thai, I think the video, there's a link to the video on there, so if you wanted to watch it, that's,
And you can, feel free to share the video with anybody you think might be interested. But thank you, really appreciate you coming today.
It's really good. We had some good discussion.